Hey guys, I have a confession to make. I don't own a capture card. So I hope you guys enjoyed trailer footage. Sorry about that. When Luigi's Mansion 3 was announced, I wasn't quite sure what to feel yet because I had never played a game in the franchise yet. So I went down and hunted a copy of the remake of the first game on the 3DS soon after it got released, and it was really good. It felt more like a Resident Evil game for kids than anything else I could have expected. It was fun, it was filled with good puzzles and good humor, and it made me completely sold on the franchise. And yet I didn't play Dark Moon yet. I decided instead to just wait until the third game's release and jump straight into it. With that being said, how is the actual third game, the Luigi's Mansion 3? Well, if I were to sell you on this game on the quickest way possible, I'd say it's a painstakingly constructed labor of love. Every single corner of this game is just filled with so much detail. Every single room has objects that feel like they belong there, and honestly, maybe they reused assets a few times, maybe they reused a lot. I didn't notice. It honestly felt like every single corner of the game, every single room you could go in, was constructed from the ground up to be this special little thing for you to explore, and that's amazing. That's a feeling I don't get in a lot of games. Now, I don't mean to dismiss open world games. I'm sure open world games have a lot of work put into them, and I'm sure developers put a lot of thought on how to place things, and that's why they take so much long to get released, and why they have so much work have to be put, so many man hours have to be put into it. But a lot of times open world games feel empty. It's hard sometimes when you're staring at the map, wondering if that forest or that city was constructed in this way because the developer had a clear level design in mind, or if he just copy-pasted random trees into it. And I don't mean, yeah, I'm kind of dismissing the work, sorry about that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that Luigi's Mansion 3 feels like it goes on the opposite direction. It is a very small, self-contained, 10-hour plus game. It took me about 12 hours to finish. But on the other hand, it feels like every single second you're experiencing exactly what the developers wanted you to. Every single time you find a secret, every single time you find an object, even if it's just a random object that doesn't have anything to it, it feels unique and placed there with care by an actual human being went and said, yes, this object needs to be placed here. Every single object. It also helps that a lot of the objects in the game have physics in them, and you can suck them with the Poltergeist, and you can play around with them with many puzzles having to do with objects that have physics with them and are not just static objects. And it goes a long way to feel like every single one of these things was placed with a specific purpose in mind, either to help with a puzzle or just to generate atmosphere or just for the hell of it, but it was placed carefully with thought, and it was relevant to the room it was found in, and every single room is like that. Digital Foundry, they said this game was like a playable CG movie, and I have to agree. It's like walking through a painting in which you know the artist put thought into every single stroke, and that's just amazing. Okay, but let's stop talking for a little bit about how fucking amazing the setting is, which it is, it really is. But let's calm down a little bit and talk more about the moment-to-moment gameplay. You play as Luigi, and your two main tools, I would say the two main tools he has are his Poltergeist, which is his vacuum he uses to vacuum ghosts, and his flashlight. And what happens basically, it sounds counterintuitive at first that the flashlight will be so important, but it really is, because you have to use them to throw a flash of light at a ghost so he can get stunned before Luigi can suck them up inside the Poltergeist. And that might sound like it get repetitive. Oh, just throw a flashlight on the ghost and then suck them up and throw a flashlight, but it doesn't. Why? Enemy variety. Enemy variety in this game is really interesting, because if you were to like list every single ghost and where they appear, you might think, oh, that's some good enemy variety, but it gets even better. Because not only there are ghosts that can only be defeated in specific ways, and these different types of ghosts get slowly introduced throughout the game, there are also variations on the ghosts, because you see, maybe this ghost is actually wearing a sunglass, so you can't just use a flashlight on him. You actually have to suck up the sunglasses first. Oh, but this ghost has a shield, and this time, just as using the poltergust to try to take the shield won't work, so what you gotta use? You gotta use a Luigi's third ability, the suction shot, which is basically a plunger with a rope tied to it that you can throw at things, and you can then use the rope on the poltergust so you can pull them harder. And there are mini ghosts as well, and there's a lot of variety. I won't go into list every single thing that is going to happen. If you want to play the game, I want to leave a few surprises for you to find. But the enemy variety is really good. Even then, the combat is not really the focus on the game. The focus of the game, the really part where it shines, it's the puzzles and the boss fights, which are basically just bigger puzzles, more climatic puzzles, and exploration, because you can explore a lot. The flashlight doesn't just serve to stun ghosts. Every time you find a green flashing light, you can use the flashlight on it to activate a device that can either help you progress through the story or find a lot of hidden stashes of coins. And oh boy, the hidden stashes of coin and cash is just so satisfying. This is an extremely suggestive sentence, but it is so satisfying, just sucking up everything in this game. The coins, the piles of cash, the ghosts, even the random things that don't give you anything, but you just kind of have that OCD sense that you just wanna suck up everything. You wanna leave the entire room as empty as possible and carry everything with you. And this game does that really well. And having such a basic part of the gameplay be so rewarding is a really good thing, because that is the moment you want the gameplay. Every single time you will be exploring this deeply rich, deeply detailed environments, solving really cool puzzles, and getting immensely satisfying rewards. All of which is painstakingly constructed and contained in such an environment that is so small, and yet it is big enough for exploration that it feels like it's just dopamine being constantly injected directly in your brain. I cannot express how satisfying this game was to play, how fun it is. It was one of those games that the moment I finished it, I immediately wanted to start replaying it. But I didn't. And here comes the bad part, because no game is perfect. And I like so much about this game, it is honestly easier to list the things I don't like about it than the things I like about it. So here is the list. The Boiler Works. That's it. There is a section of the game called the Boiler Works, which is just absolutely horrible, because there is an incredible different control scheme throughout it, and you have to fight a boss in it in an extremely tiny arena surrounded by spikes using this terrible control scheme. And it's just so awful. It is practically the only moment in the game I had to use the gold bones I bought. Oh, by the way, you can buy things with the money you get, but they're so irrelevant. The money is more of a satisfaction factor for collecting than buying things. But back to the Boiler Works. It is horrible. It is absolutely horrendous, this section, and I hated it. And you don't go to it only once. You actually have to visit it twice. And the second time is for an incredibly stupid escort mission, and it's just horrible. Every time you go there, the game grinds to a halt. The Boiler Works isn't the only offender. There are a few other complaints I have. There are a few sections of the game, particularly the second time you go there for escort mission, that just feels like padding. There are a few moments in the game that just feel like padding. And that padding is completely unnecessary, because if there wasn't padding, this game would be 100% perfect and people would just replay it immediately after finishing it, which is what I'm hesitant to do because of these horrible sections. And the padding part that isn't in the Boiler Works is not as bad as the Boiler Works. It's kind of creative, but it's just padding. They really just didn't need to make the game this long. Shorter games can also have their charm in their high replay value, because hey, it's short. Why not just go there and experience the cool things again? Especially since this game is so detail heavy and there are so many secrets and stuff around that, like, if you play this game and you wait a month before coming back to it, you are probably going to remember the major parts like the boss fights, but there's no way you're going to remember every single corner and every single puzzle. Wait a year to replay this game and it's practically fresh just to how much details there are in here. And the other complaint I have is that at the beginning of the game, you have to use an elevator to go to the different floors, but also the stairs, because the elevator isn't immediately available, and the first 4 or so floors, the basement floor, the first floor and the second floor are interconnected by stairs, and that gives the impression that the entire hotel is going to be interconnected, and you kind of have to use the elevator to go somewhere, and you have to use the stairs to go to another places, and some places are locked up, and it gives this feeling of interconnectedness that reminds me of Luigi's Mansion, the first game. But immediately after, when you start going through the other floors, it gets completely dropped, and the layout of the floors is completely linear, and there is no interaction between floors, which is sort of disappointing. But hey, even if each floor was its own level, but it still had some basic level of interconnectedness in the floor itself, then it would be like if you were exploring a bunch of mini mansions, which would have been cool, but that is not always the case. There is an unfortunate number of floors in this game that are really completely linear in a straight line. Not all of them are. There are quite a few that aren't, but there are a few that are like, just like, for example, the gardens. If you play the game, you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the gardens. It's just a straight line with a few rooms around on the way to the finish, and that hinders the exploration of these floors, because if you remember of something, hey, I didn't check that out, I should go back and check that out, you're going to have to walk in a straight line through the entire level until you reach the point where you actually want to explore, compared there to the more interconnected kind of floors, where you can just use the corridors between rooms to get there. Fortunately, those completely linear levels are rare, and even then, a lot of them are sort of a loop, so you can begin at the end in case you want to check something that was near the end. But it's not a completely good solution. I would have rather preferred if all of them were heavily interconnected, at least with themselves, so that the exploration factor could really go higher, and it would be more incentivized for you to repeat those levels, those particular floors. And the final element that I'm going to mention right now, separate from everything, because it is separate from everything basically, it's the multiplayer aspects. Scream Park, which is sort of a arena party game thing going on. I didn't play it. I'm sorry to say, I didn't play Scream Park. What I did play though was the other multiplayer component, Skyscraper. And Skyscraper sounds like heaven when I explain you the concept. Why? Because it's essentially a randomly generated Luigi's Mansion you can play online with 4-player co-op, and they can even summon their own Luigis, which I didn't mention is basically a Ghoul version of Luigi, which is amazing in this game and is cleverly used in puzzles and bosses. And it's Skyscraper. Just imagine a randomly generated mansion, infinite randomly generated content of this wonderful game that you can play in 4-player co-op, and the 4-player co-op can then summon their own versions of co-op partners that essentially act as if you were walking around with 8 Luigis at any given time, which sounds amazing. But the problem is, online a lot of people didn't really cooperate very much, and this game requires cooperation because it has a time limit, and you have to clear certain floors within the time limit. And basically, the time limit is very tight, so everyone has to really cooperate to get things done, and they don't. And there are a lot of things that can be unlocked and a lot of parts that require multiple players, and they don't go there. They just randomly scatter throughout the floor, and it can get frustrating. But players aside, a much more demoly criticism I have of it is how bland it looks. I didn't play much of it, I played some of it, but it looks really bland. The hotels, just the main Luigi's Mansion, the hotel where it takes place, is just amazing. It is cluttered with awesome details. The Skyscraper's hotel, on the other hand, perhaps to accommodate for the 4-player co-op, look a lot emptier and blander, a lot more bland than the main hotel. And the detail is like one of the most awesome parts of Luigi's Mansion, so it is an infinite Luigi's Mansion. It's just Luigi's Mansion 2.5, I don't know but how to explain it, but it does feel a lot less like the constant everything is planned exactly so you can enjoy it, which you know is going to happen on randomly generated rooms, but at least they could have made the rooms themselves more detailed and stuff. Well, I'm kind of running out of steam here, so let's end this review by saying don't let these final criticisms stick with you, because they are actually very minor things on this amazingly awesome game, which I think was completely worth the price tag. It's next level games really brought their next level game. Oh god, that was horrible. To this franchise. And there is more DLC incoming, but unfortunately it's for Skyscraper. But if they release Luigi's Mansion 3.5 or 4 or main story DLC with more floors, maybe a second hotel, I don't know, I would totally buy that. I would totally get into it. Next Level Games, produce more content. You guys are the best. And this game is probably one of my favorite games of 2019. Well, that's it. Have a nice day, guys.